Now we're starting on bag B, and it's the first half side of the gearbox. So just getting everything, I've just got everything into place to start. So I just need the grease. There we go. So first things first is find the right way up on the casing, which is this way, and we drop in the two nutted tubes. And the things, before putting everything else in, I recommend putting the side on. Just got to work out the correct one. Because I'm holding the nuts in with my fingers, because these screw in from this side. That's why I recommend doing this first, because it holds it nicely into place. And that should be like that. Then we take this B2 and fit the bearing. And that drops into the case there. And we got a little, just another shaft holder there. Actually ignore what I've done, because you've got to do, it's one of those things you have got to be multi-handed for this. You can't put the two screws in first. Typical. Like I said, it's a long while since I put one of these together, even though I have. So it looks like this is going to be, forgot how fun these are. Then you've got to take this bevel gear and grease it. And drop that on there. Then you've got to take the gear housing. I'm not going to grease the edge, I should be able to do that from the outside. We'll just put a little bit of grease in there, these parts. I'm just using my normal waterproof grease. They give you ceramic. There we go. Bit more on those. Yeah, on the bevel gears. and then it says put it all together. And like I said, you see the part can fall out. So we'll drop that bit back in. Now grease the cog, I can get to it still. Cuts down the mess one while trying to do this. Now we fit the shaft in to there, and then, like I said, the bearing upgrade, of course. Two little tiny 850s go in. Shouldn't need a lot of grease because there's plenty on the other gear. There we go. Oh, wait a sec, missed a bit. The other bevel gear, it's got to go on. Happy with that. Then we've got to just drop in the standoffs, which is one there, one there, one there, and two on the motor area. And that's what you should end up with, just a bit of grease to be added to this gear. That'll be plenty. So that's part 13 done. Now part 14. These are the bits required. So first thing I'm going to do is put the bearing on into the cup, and that literally will drop in with this. I'll try and drop it in with the side panel. And then again, you've got the little cup which goes on the shaft, so the easiest way is to just drop it onto the shaft. I missed one part I've got to get in a sec, is E6. But let's get the two sides together. So bearing cup, drop the side on. And then again we'll put those two little screws in just to hold it, and then we get one screw through. It's quite incredible when you think how they came up for the design of this gearbox, of having a centerpiece and then clamping two aluminium plates round. Now we've got that, it says the darker screw, and that goes through this hole at the back there, it says. We will double check. Yep, that's what it's saying. And then it has the lock nut. And just do it up. There we go. There's part E6. Just goes on like so. You have to use a washer on these longer screws. And two more lock nuts. And that completes section 14. Now part 15, we've got to take those screws out we put in to hold it together, and that's what puts the gearbox onto the main chassis. And the longer screws go at the top. And these two short ones go through this side hole. last screw doesn't want to go in. There we go. And now we've completed stage 15. Now we're on to stage 16, which is CVDs. I've cut the rubber tubing down. You just cut the pieces down so you end up with those. And then when you assemble, a little bit of anti-wear grease. And you've got really small grub screws on these. So what they say to do first, what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a small amount of thread lock on the grub screw. So that's ready. And then you start off with some anti-wear grease. I'm using an old tub here, saving the new one. Then we'll put the cap on. Let's see. Get this in the right order. Always have a piece of tissue handy. There we go. Slide the cap on with the tube in the middle of the part. Slip the pin in. Hold it on the sides so you've got the grub screw exposed. Wind it in and a little nip up. And that is one done. And then all you've got to do is slide the boot on. I don't know which is the best way to do this. Are they from this end, they're saying? Because you've got to get it over the dog bone end. Bit of a faff, but it's in. And then just repeat for the second one. Now part 17 is setting up the rear arms. You've got to be careful because the drive cup, one has 2 O-rings, one has 1. So I'll do the 2 first. I find often using the dog bone a good way to get them most of the way down, and then hopefully it's not doing what it's doing now, twisting. This one. Double check that's the one it was supposed to be done. They seem in solid. Then that can go on into there. There we go, like so. Then we've got to take the correct arm, which is right, push a bearing in, and drop the assembly in. And that's what we should end up with. So repeat for the other side, but this time it says 1 O-ring. That's 1 O-ring in, and hold it together with the cup roughly. Second bearing into the left side unit and drop it in. So that completes part 17. Now we're on to part 18, which is fitting on the rear axles and rear arms. So we have the right one for each side, and what we've got to do is put some grease on here. And then a smear around here, and a smear around the tube this side. And then what happens is you put it in the front of the gearbox and you slowly try to line this up. I might use the other side first. There we go. That's it, nicely lined up. And then you put on the correct side of here. And it's held with 3 screws aside. I'm not going to go over tight with these because it's one of those little places where it can be another weak point. But then if you do break them, what you do is you buy the brat ones, which are metal, and put them on in the place. And all I'm doing is I'm literally winding these in until they stop. One side done. So smear each side on these. Take out the shaft because we didn't grease it. There we go. The diff is turning. Get the shaft back into place. And then just 3 more screws. And we have now completed part 18, and that is the completion of bag B. Now bag C, shocks. I'm not gonna go into building shocks. It says makes 4, but what I'm going to do is make them the same with the bump stops, but I'm going to put a 3mm spacer on the inside just to shrink the shocks down a little bit and just make it sit a little bit lower because of the CVDs. But like I said, I don't need to go through the building of these because it's the same shocks on every single Tamiya really which has these sort of shocks. So the next stage you'll see is we'll be on part 22 when we're actually going to fit them.